Jung left us an invaluable legacy, the knowledge that true love begins within ourselves. It's not just about finding the ideal partner or attracting harmonious relationships. It's about understanding that the way we love ourselves defines how the world reflects that love back to us. The most important relationship in your life is the one you have with yourself. Throughout life, we seek love in different forms. We believe someone else will complete us, that a relationship will bring us happiness, or that we'll be truly loved once we achieve a certain appearance, success, or external validation. But Jung taught us that as long as we don't fully love ourselves, we'll keep attracting relationships that reflect our wounds instead of our potential. Have you ever felt not enough? Have you experienced the fear that if you show every part of yourself, you'll be rejected? That feeling of insufficiency doesn't come from reality, but from an internal programming shaped by our experiences, traumas, and unconscious beliefs. From childhood, we learn to hide parts of ourselves to be accepted. We adapt to what others expect, repressing aspects of ourselves that at some point felt inadequate. But those parts we hide don't disappear. They become what Jung called the shadow, the aspects of our psyche we reject. And so they end up manifesting in our relationships unconsciously. If you've ever noticed that you attract the same type of relationships that hurt you, or that you repeat patterns where you feel ignored, insufficient, or undervalued, it's not a coincidence. It's the external manifestation of what hasn't healed inside you. The key to transforming your love life isn't in changing others, but in changing the relationship you have with yourself. The love you seek outside can only manifest when you first cultivate it within. Every unhealed wound, every insecurity, every fragment of yourself you've rejected seeks reconciliation. You can't attract a relationship that reflects unconditional love if you haven't learned to love yourself that way. You can't expect someone else to value you when you constantly criticize and judge yourself. Think of all the times you've spoken to yourself harshly, the moments you've downplayed your achievements, the days you've compared yourself to others, feeling you're not enough. Now imagine a small child hearing those words. That child is you, the most vulnerable and authentic part of your being, the one that needs your compassion and understanding. Every time you treat yourself harshly, you reinforce the belief that you're not worthy of love. And that message doesn't just affect your self-esteem, it also defines what you allow in your relationships. If you don't believe you deserve unconditional love, you'll attract people who reinforce that belief, because the mind seeks to confirm what it already assumes as true. Jung showed us that transformation begins with integrating our shadow. This means embracing every part of ourselves, even the ones we've considered undesirable. It means understanding that our wounds don't make us less valuable but human, that our insecurities don't define us, but show us where we need to give ourselves more love. When you start seeing yourself with compassion, accepting every part of you without judgment, something profound changes. Your energy transforms, and that transformation reflects in how you relate to the world. You begin to set healthy boundaries, to recognize what you deserve, and to stop accepting emotional crumbs. The right love isn't something you need to chase. It's something that manifests when you vibrate at that frequency. Not because someone magically appears to complete you, but because when you love yourself fully, you no longer need anyone to fill a void. From that place of wholeness, the relationships you attract reflect internal abundance, not lack. If you've ever wondered why you keep attracting relationships that make you doubt your worth, why you feel invisible, or why you repeat the same patterns of pain, the answer isn't outside, it's within you. Life isn't punishing you, it's showing you what you need to heal. When you stop seeking love and start being love, everything changes. You stop begging for affection and start attracting authentic connections. You stop settling for the minimum and begin recognizing your true worth. You stop fearing rejection and start embracing your authenticity without fear. This is the most powerful process you can begin. Loving yourself unconditionally without waiting for someone else to give you permission. Because when you learn to love yourself, the love that comes into your life is the one you always deserved. Not a love based on need or fear, but on authenticity and wholeness. This is the first step. The real question is, are you ready to look at yourself with the eyes of love and see what's always been there? When you begin to see yourself with the eyes of love, you discover that many of the beliefs you've held about yourself weren't yours. They were imposed by society, family, experiences. You grew up believing you'd only be worthy if you met certain standards, if you were enough for others, if you didn't make mistakes. But all of that is an illusion. Self-love isn't about perfection, it's about authenticity. Carl Jung taught us that individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are, means shedding the masks we've worn to fit in. We can't experience real love if we keep trying to be what others expect of us. True connection arises when we show ourselves without fear, when we stop adjusting our essence to be accepted. Have you ever felt you had to be different for someone to love you? That you had to hide certain aspects of yourself to be valued? That feeling that you must earn love is a deep wound you can only heal when you decide, once and for all, that you're enough just as you are. There's no more transformative love than the one you give yourself. And it's not about repeating nice phrases in front of the mirror. It's about proving to yourself daily through actions that you're valuable. When you choose to walk away from what doesn't respect you, when you stop justifying mistreatment, when you set boundaries without guilt, you're telling your unconscious, I deserve more. And that message is powerful. The unconscious records everything you do, not just what you say. If you speak to yourself with love, but stay in relationships that diminish you, the message you reinforce is that you're not enough. But when you start acting in alignment with your worth, when you stop begging for attention and begin treating yourself like you treat someone you love, everything starts to change. Relationships are mirrors. They show us the parts of ourselves we need to heal. If you've experienced rejection, ask yourself in what ways you've rejected yourself. If you've felt abandonment, ask if you've been there for yourself or if you've sought others to fill that void. If you felt you're not enough, look at how often you've spoken to yourself harshly or denied yourself what you truly deserve. There are no mistakes in what you've lived. Every experience has been a teacher, every relationship an opportunity to see what you need to work on within yourself. And when you stop seeing it as punishment and start seeing it as guidance, you reclaim your power. Because if everything is within you, then you also have the ability to change it. The key isn't to seek the right love. It's to become the person who loves themselves so much that they only accept love that reflects that same energy. And this doesn't mean becoming inaccessible or building impenetrable walls. It means having clarity, knowing what you deserve, and being willing to let go of what isn't aligned with that. Letting go isn't losing. It's creating space for what truly resonates with you. It's not easy because it means facing your own fears. Fear of loneliness, fear that no one else will come, fear that maybe you don't deserve more than you have now. But those fears are just remnants of old beliefs. They're not the truth. The truth is that when you choose yourself, the universe responds. When you decide you're enough, life confirms it. When you let go of what doesn't value you, you make room for what does. It's not an instant process, but every day you act from self-love, you reinforce a new reality. This path isn't for those seeking quick fixes. It's for those ready for real transformation, for those willing to look at themselves with honesty and do the inner work needed to attract what they truly deserve. The question isn't whether someone else will love you. The real question is, do you love yourself enough to stop accepting less than you deserve? Every time you choose to love yourself, every time you give yourself the respect you've always expected from others, something inside you begins to heal. Because self-love isn't an abstract concept, it's a daily practice. It's about how you talk to yourself when no one's listening, how you hold yourself in your most vulnerable moments, how you choose yourself even when the world seems not to. Carl Jung taught us that the unconscious guides us constantly through our emotions, our patterns, and our relationships. If you've noticed certain situations repeating in your life, it's not a coincidence. It's your unconscious showing you what you haven't yet integrated. If you keep attracting people who make you feel insufficient, it's because deep within, you haven't fully accepted your own worth. The problem is that often we try to heal from the outside. We think that if we find the right relationship, the right job, the right recognition, then we'll finally feel complete. But this only takes us further from the truth. Jung warned us about this. The love, validation, and peace we seek aren't in the external world. They're within us. When we understand this, we stop desperately seeking someone else to confirm what we haven't yet recognized in ourselves. We stop waiting for a partner to make us feel valuable because we already know we are. We stop seeking acceptance in places where we'll never find it because we've learned to give it to ourselves. And here's where the transformation happens. Because the right love isn't about finding someone to fill your voids. It's about sharing from wholeness. It's not about receiving what you lack, but giving from abundance. And when you change your relationship with yourself, the quality of the relationships you attract inevitably changes. Maybe until now, you've lived with the idea that love requires sacrifice, that you must mold yourself to fit in, that you need to change to be worthy. But none of that is true. Real love doesn't ask you to betray yourself. It doesn't demand you lose yourself in someone else. It doesn't force you to live in constant struggle to be enough. If a relationship requires you to leave parts of yourself behind, it's not love, it's fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of not being loved. Fear that if you show your true self, you'll be rejected. But the right love never stems from fear. It comes from freedom, from the certainty that you can be fully yourself and still be loved. This is the big difference between love that hurts and love that heals. Love based on lack makes you doubt your worth, makes you feel insufficient, fills you with anxiety. Love based on authenticity, on the other hand, gives you peace. It doesn't make you feel like you have to fight to be seen, compete for attention, or constantly prove you're worthy. It just flows. But to attract that love, you first need to give it to yourself. Not as a nice idea, but as a real commitment. It means stopping making excuses for accepting less than you deserve. It means daring to walk alone if necessary, rather than settling for a relationship that only feeds your fear of abandonment. When you make this decision, your life changes. You begin to move differently, with more confidence, with more clarity. You stop accepting crumbs because you know you deserve the full feast. You stop fearing loneliness because you understand you've never truly been alone. You've always had yourself. And the most incredible thing is that when you start living from this place, the people who aren't aligned with your energy drift away naturally. They no longer fit with your new vibration. And though it might feel scary to let go at first, with time, you realize you were only making space for something better. Nothing changes until you change. Nothing improves until you allow yourself to let go of what no longer resonates with you. And when you finally take that step, when you choose yourself without fear, when you decide to truly love yourself, the right love manifests, not because you desperately sought it, but because you finally vibrate at the frequency where it was always meant to find you. When you decide to love yourself unconditionally, when you become the center of your own life without guilt or fear, the world around you responds to that change. The people who once seemed out of reach start to draw near, while those who were only in your life for convenience drift away without you having to force it. It's not magic, it's energy. It's the universe showing you that everything you once accepted out of lack only held on because you hadn't yet recognized yourself in your entirety. Carl Jung taught us that the human psyche organizes itself around deep patterns, invisible structures that determine our relationships and experiences. One of these patterns is how we connect with love. If you grew up in an environment where love was conditional, where it had to be a certain way to receive affection, you likely still carry the belief that you must earn others' love. But real love isn't earned. It isn't begged for. It isn't negotiated. Real love simply is. The problem is that we often get so used to living in relationships based on struggle that we confuse love with suffering. We think if it doesn't hurt, it's not real. That if there's no sacrifice, there's no commitment. That if we don't constantly strive to be enough, it's not worth it. But all of this is a distortion, a reflection of our own unhealed wounds. When you begin to heal your relationship with yourself, you stop feeling drawn to what once hurt you. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth in relationships that only drain you. You no longer care to be where you're not seen or to prove your love to someone who isn't ready to receive it, because you understand that love isn't a struggle, it's a state of being. This is where the concept of individuation comes in. Jung described individuation as the process of integrating all parts of our being, both the ones we accept and the ones we've repressed. In other words, the path to wholeness isn't about eliminating our insecurities, but recognizing them without fear. It's not about ignoring our shadows, but embracing them with compassion. When you achieve this, When you look at yourself without judgment or fear, when you understand that every part of you deserves to be loved, you stop seeking validation in others. And paradoxically, it's in that moment that true love comes into your life. Because you no longer need it from a place of lack, you receive it from abundance. The healthiest relationships aren't those where people try to complete each other, but those where each person is whole and chooses to share their life with another. Not out of need, but out of choice. And to reach that point, you first need to make peace with yourself. Think of all the times you've punished yourself for not being perfect, the times you felt you weren't enough, the moments you've questioned whether you'd ever find someone to love you as you are. Now imagine that instead of seeking that security outside, you build it within yourself. That instead of waiting for someone else to choose you, you choose yourself first. That instead of adapting to be loved, you allow yourself to be authentic without fear of rejection. This is the most important work you can do, because every relationship you have will be a direct reflection of the relationship you have with yourself. And when that relationship is solid, when you hold yourself, respect yourself, and love yourself unconditionally, the right love manifests, not because you sought it, but because you finally become a magnet for it. When you begin to see yourself with love and respect, the world around you changes. You stop feeling anxious about the future. You stop clinging to relationships that don't add value. And above all, you begin to experience the true peace of being who you really are. The anxiety, insecurity, and fear of rejection are symptoms of a disconnection from your essence. They're signs that on some level, you've been seeking outside what you can only find within. Carl Jung taught us that the unconscious is the mirror of our reality. If your life is dominated by relationships full of uncertainty, confusion, and pain, it's not a coincidence. It's a projection of what you haven't yet worked on within yourself. Not because you deserve it, but because life is showing you what you need to heal. And when we ignore those signals, the same pattern repeats over and over until we finally decide to do the inner work. Maybe you've wondered why some people seem to be magnets for healthy, loving relationships, while others get trapped in cycles of emotional suffering. The difference isn't in luck, appearance, or fate. The difference is in how those people relate to themselves. If you treat yourself harshly, if you constantly doubt your worth, if you feel you need to prove your love to be loved, then without realizing it, you'll attract people who reinforce that belief. Because the love we allow into our lives is a reflection of the love we believe we deserve. And until you change that belief, you'll keep seeing the same result, no matter how much you try to change others. This is where the importance of the shadow comes in. Jung showed us that the part of ourselves we repress doesn't disappear. It hides deep in the unconscious and manifests in other ways. If you've repressed your voice, you'll attract people who make you feel invisible. If you've repressed your power, you'll attract relationships where you feel out of control. If you've repressed your self-love, you'll attract connections where love feels conditional, unstable, or insufficient. But when you decide to face that shadow, when you choose to see it and heal it instead of running from it, everything changes. You no longer need to prove anything to anyone. You no longer feel anxious when someone pulls away. You no longer fear loneliness because you understand you've never been alone. You've always been with yourself. And in that moment, love stops being a need and becomes a choice. The right love isn't about finding someone to fill your voids. It's about being so complete that whoever comes into your life is just an extension of the wholeness you've already found in yourself. And when you reach that point, relationships are no longer a space of struggle or dependency, but a reflection of freedom, connection, and true intimacy. The fear of rejection disappears when you understand that true love never demands you betray yourself. That whoever is truly meant to be in your life will see you, choose you, and love you for who you are, not for the edited version you created to be accepted. And that what isn't for you will leave without effort, without struggle, and without unnecessary suffering. When you decide to let go of the need for control, when you stop trying to force connections that don't flow naturally, something incredible happens. You realize that love isn't something you chase, it's something you allow. That it's not something you earn with effort, but something that simply happens when you're at peace with yourself. And in that instant, the right love manifests, not because you sought it, but because you finally learned to receive it. When you learn to receive love without fear, without doubts, and without needing external validation, everything in your life aligns naturally. You no longer feel anxious waiting for a message. You no longer try to convince someone to choose you. You no longer have to prove your worth, because when you truly choose yourself, the love that comes into your life isn't uncertain or unstable. It's clear, it's solid, it's secure. Carl Jung showed us that true love begins when we stop seeking outside what already exists within us. As long as we live from lack, we'll keep attracting experiences that reinforce that sense of insufficiency. But when we decide to heal, when we commit to our own wholeness, love stops being a challenge and becomes a state of peace. This is the point where everything changes. When you no longer fear being alone, when you no longer need someone else to confirm you're enough, when you become your own source of love and security, the relationships you attract reflect that transformation. You stop connecting with people who play with your energy and start vibrating with those who are truly aligned with you. The right love isn't a prize you get when you're perfect. It's the natural result of having made peace with yourself. And the most beautiful thing about this process is that it doesn't just transform your relationships, it transforms your entire life. Because when you learn to love yourself, everything else falls into place. Your energy changes, your opportunities expand, and life begins to reflect what you always deserved. Now I want you to think about this. What can you do today to love yourself a little more? Maybe it's setting boundaries. Maybe it's stopping justifying the unjustifiable. Maybe it's starting to speak to yourself with more compassion. Whatever it is, start today. Because the love you seek isn't in the future. It's in this moment, in how you decide to treat yourself. If this message resonated with you, I want you to share it with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe someone who hasn't yet realized their worth, someone still seeking love in the wrong places, someone who needs a reminder that they deserve more. I also want you to leave a comment below and tell me which part of this message touched your heart. Because by sharing your experience, you not only connect with others, you help this message reach more people who need it. Remember to subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. Here we talk about deep topics, real transformation, and how to connect with your true self. And if you ever feel like you need a sign, someone to remind you of your worth, come back to this video and listen again. Because the most important thing to remember is this: the love you seek has always been within you. Now is your moment to allow yourself to receive it.